If you can feel that staying human is worthwhile, then you've beaten them. George Orwell, 1984. Now, this book is an awful, frightening book as each year passes. That Big Brother has an eye on us, and it does, the NSA. It originally was called the Patriot Act, and then Obama got in office and it went on steroids in a way that we could never have dreamed. Now, the idea of 1984 is the communist government, and that's exactly what the communist government did. It constantly watched everyone and was waiting and watching for wrongthink, political wrongthink. If there was a counter-revolutionary out there, which is interesting, that used the word Patriot Act, oh, this is wonderful, what does it mean? It means the opposite. It means an incredible invasion of privacy. It means Big Brother watching you at all times. But the Democrats complained about Bush's Patriot Act. Yet Bush's Patriot Act only went so far. It really was basically looking for communication from America and outside the country. You know, what was going on. Made a little sense. When Obama came into office, that's it. Big Brother hit. Every single thing that we do or say or buy on the internet, everything. And it has been made indispensable. You used to pick up a phone book and look in the phone book for the number, or you called the telephone company, you dialed 0, and then you got the operator and you talked to a human being. It's much, much more human. And you know, where you had a feeling who you were talking to, rather than now we talk. If we do talk to a representative, it's on the internet, and we have no idea who we're talking to. And we just type something back and forth, and there's no human exchange. There's no human exchange. Then sometimes when you actually talk to the person, they listen to you, and they listen to the inflection of your voice. And if you have a plight, they sometimes have compassion for you, and they say, all right, I'll do this for you. I'll make this happen. We don't ordinarily do this, but it does sound like you're in a bind, and we're having less and less of that. It's become completely impersonal, and that is impersonal. Speaking of impersonal, Stalin, he invented the idea of non-personhood, and that's. With the internet, that's what everything has become. Now, the communist government would basically have envied Obama and how he basically created this monster that kept tabs on everyone. And if you look up Bill Binney, who used to work for the NSA, he was a whistleblower and is quite a genius. He says that everything we do, now if this idea, well, they're not going to catch that phone call, they'll have to go look into that phone call. Basically, they don't listen to each phone call, but they collect metadata. And they get more information through metadata than they do with listening to one phone call, because they can see everyone that that phone call is connected to. Obama basically changed it to 2 steps. And then down to 1 step. The person, it's between you and the person that you're talking to. And then you can collect the data on everyone that other person is talking to. All of their information. And all the information throughout the web. You send things throughout all the web. It comes together into a packet. Each one of us, a packet. Imagine there's once a thing called a manila folder. Imagine your name on that manila folder, and you send all these pieces of paper out. You mail things out. You work in an office and you mail things out, and then things come back, and everything you've mailed out, you put in that manila envelope, and everything that comes back that is connected to you, and let's say your case, is put into that manila envelope. Well, in this case, so they've got everything. They can just pull it out and say, they open up that folder and they can see everything. Well, once you have, you keep tabs on one person and who they are contacting. And then Obama allowed it to go further, everyone that person is contacting. And so basically, once you've taken that extra step, you have the right to keep tabs on everyone in the world, not just this person that you're suspecting of doing something against America or doing something against the law in some way. You basically can keep tabs on the entire world, everyone in the world. That's how out of control and crazy this is. And that's how Bill Binney described it. And now he's living in Holland. He's living outside the country, and he does interviews every now and then. So imagine someone opening you up, right? They just open their and they look inside. They look inside your brain, and they're able to look inside you and see everything that's wrong with you, everything that you ate, every vitamin you took. And they popped open your brain, and were able to read everything inside your brain. What are you? What are you at that point? Well, at that point, you've become a robot on an assembly line, because the government knows everything about you and controls wrongthink. The counter-revolutionaries are the ones that they pick up. You see, a revolutionary, you would think, would be somebody that would go against the government, right? That's what a revolutionary is. No, a revolutionary in Soviet Russia is someone that is in lockstep with everything the party wants you to do, everything the dictator has decided that you do. You can only do and say these things. You can only have so much food. You can only have so many clothes. You can only live here. And you can't have, your space is, you can only have so much space to live in. And they decide who lives with you. They decide everything for you. A counter-revolutionary, which you would think would be someone who is against revolution and who would be in lockstep with the government. No. See how they changed the meaning words. They changed history by destroying history, by destroying Russia's past. Mao destroyed China's past. Things that will never... Poetry and song and the graves of people that existed, the memory of the emperors that were still digging things up. I mean, his Red Guard didn't destroy everything. We were pretty lucky on that one. But by destroying history, you only know what the party decides. And in 1984, it's about the party decides each day what history is. History is abolished, and they tell you what the truth is. That's why we're having this problem with the Antifa and the socialists, who actually don't know the history of socialism and communism. That's been rewritten. It's been rewritten to say that it's because of capitalist America, and you see how successful America is. It's because America took something away from these other countries. That's why they're poor. They, a long time ago, they took money from them. And so that's why they're living in poverty. Well, no, think about it. They're living under a dictator. They're living under, it's a military state. And the dictator is dictating at his whim everything that you can do and say, what everything costs, and what he wants. He owns everything. The state owns everything. No, it doesn't matter if a country comes in and steals all your gold and all of a sudden you become poor. The person who's running the country doesn't have to lose their humanity and do cruel, inhuman acts to you. It doesn't happen that way. You don't destroy everyone in your country because as it's happened since the dawn of time, countries have invaded other countries. Tribes, before that was tribe. One tribe would war on another tribe. Still happening today in parts of this world. There are 43 million slaves in this world. People take people as slaves. In slaves, not in the Western world or any Christian world, but there are slaves, 43 million total, which is a big shocker for the socialists. So you can blame. You can blame all day, and that's what this is about. It's about communism, 1984 communism. It's about pointing to a group of people and saying it's all because of their fault. It's their fault that you are poor and that you are suffering, so hate them. It's all the white people's fault. You hear that? It's the color of your skin, basically. It's the white people's fault why all these people are poor. It's America's fault why all these countries are poor. And that's what these socialists and Antifa people are being fed. But it makes no sense, because why would the party that is ruling that state rule it like a military state? Why would they lose their humanity and their compassion for the people when they say it's all about the people? But that's just a word like counter-revolutionary or Affordable Care Act, which turned out to be non-affordable at all, and people couldn't even use their health care. They had to pay into it, and they couldn't afford to pay into it, but they had to pay, even though they couldn't even use it because the deductible was so high and so much money was being taken away from them. So that's the opposite word. So when you have, why would that take the humanity away from the people running the state? See, the party will forever blame another country for the poverty in their country. But why did it take their I would, if it was me and someone came in and I ruled the country and someone took away from my people their food or their wealth or something, I would think of some way to rebuild my country. Gather seeds wherever you can find them. You gather water and then it will grow and we'll at least have food. And from there we'll go on, and maybe we'll have something that we can trade with another country. Like, look, we'll provide you this, could you give us that? And I would sacrifice myself if I had to, for the sake of the people in my country, but I would not lose my humanity. And for the rest of my life, blame this other country because they came in and took something, when the truth is, America didn't take any money from any of these countries. These countries are the way they are because they adopted socialism. Why they adopted socialism, communism, is because you can have complete control of the people. Each person becomes a drone. They're a robot on an assembly line. They've lost their humanity. And this works good for the party. This works good for the people on top controlling the other people. This works good for the dictator. If you can have, basically it's a slave state. Imagine a plantation and the master and his slaves, right? And he makes his slaves do whatever he wants them to do, but he lives the high life. And he dictates the law on his plantation. So basically, socialism is a slave state. And there's a master ruling it, making the laws. And he can basically hypnotize his people because they're so dependent on the state. They're dependent on him for every drop of water and every crumb that they eat and the clothes on their back, because they can only have so much. Only so much is made. They can only have so much. And you know, if you're past your prime, if you're elderly, if you're sick, you're killed. So you're completely dependent on that dictator, whatever that dictator says or does, right? So you become hypnotized. And then when you're in that desperate state and the dictator says, it's because of them that you don't have this. It's because of them that you don't even have education. It's because of them. Then the people don't think and turn on the dictator and say, no, you have taken this from us. You're living the high life and we're dependent on you. You can break people down. And that's what socialism does, communism does. You break people down. You keep breaking them down and taking away their humanity to the point where they believe you. They believe the lie. When a child grows up in an abusive household, and if the parents are extremely abusive and withhold food, lock the child in their room, beat them senseless, and they say that you've done something wrong, even if you haven't done anything wrong. This is why you're not getting this. Or they blame someone else. Well, we're poor because this person has made us poor. Living under that year after year after year, you begin to erode. You're certainly not getting enough nutrition. Your brain isn't growing and expand. There's nothing. What's expanding your brain? What is growing? What book are you reading? Are you reading? You're reading what the state tells you to read. That's the only thing that you can know is what the state tells you to read. So what happens? You become hypnotized. You become brainwashed, and you believe it. And just like a child has to make sense of why the parent is beating them, why they're being abused. And I remember my own father saying he lived in foster homes because his mother left the father died young and the mother left the country. She went back to her home country. And he said, I got beat up because I deserved it. He had to make sense of it. You have to change, otherwise you can't live. You're dependent on them for everything that goes in your mouth. You're dependent on the state, the dictator, for every bit of food. That you need that food. You need those clothes. You need the home, and you need protection from the elements. And just like a child, if you think for a moment that your parents are cruel or bad, you're dependent on them for everything. You'll go crazy. It'll be a sorrow that you can never get over. So you have to make sense of it. I deserve this. Either I deserve this, or they tell you that it's their fault. It's someone else's fault in communism. Well, they do both things. It's your fault. You have wrong-think. That's why you're being punished. That's why we have to kill you. That's why 1984, it's the struggle to keep your humanity. You know ultimately that the state is going to kill you. And there's room 101 where you basically get your face is eaten off slowly by hungry rats. And it's the fight. It's the fight to keep your humanity for as long as you can live. Instead of being completely brainwashed, you can pretend that you're brainwashed, but inside you still love. Inside, Winston still loved Julia. And as long as they held their feelings, that's one thing that the state could never take away, is their feelings, their love for each other. But now, it's very interesting that we've gone another step, beyond 1984. In fact, 1984 is almost backwards now. It's almost prehistoric now. Because now they are telling us, this is true or not, but they're telling us, and that's just enough to drive us crazy and to keep us under control, that they can read brainwaves. They can read our thoughts. They can read our thoughts. Then it's very hard to separate our feelings from our thoughts. There's words that come out of our mouth and we can say what we have done and all that stuff. But I know in my brain, when I have feelings, I think about those feelings, whether they be sad or happy or love, whatever it is, and I begin to think and dream. That's where sometimes, if it's a good thought, that's where our happiness comes. When we dream about these things that we love, or the sorrow that we're carrying, we think about that. Maybe we think about ways of getting over it, but now they have the ability to read our thoughts. So 1984, if this is true, 1984 is going bye-bye. And unfortunately, we may or may not be able to keep our humanity. But we must try. We must try. I don't know how to educate the socialists and communists. I don't know how to educate them because they've been told that 1984 is about capitalism. It's the opposite. Orwell was writing about capitalism, and communism is the good thing, is the free thing. You see how twisted that is. It doesn't make any sense. And so how do you get through to people where it doesn't make any sense? And I wonder, is it some kind of drug or something that was prevalent, and the mother had the child in the womb, and then somehow something got disconnected. Our brain continues to grow to the age of 26. So whatever chemical we put in our body, it does affect our brain. And they say that marijuana, which is very prevalent, if you have it before a certain age, you can't even have an intimate relationship. You lost that ability for an intimate relationship. And I kind of wonder, because Rome was destroyed by bread and circuses. Bread and circuses meaning that the government, what they did was they opened up the borders and they brought in immigrants, and they actually paid for the immigrants to have children. Yet the citizens couldn't afford to have children. And they put on games in the Colosseum, and they gave away free wine. So they basically lulled the masses with entertainment and drugs. And they didn't really know that their country was basically going down. They did this to get votes, bring in more people and get more votes, keep them in office by giving the people this. And so the government became completely corrupt, and Rome has never been the same. It broke up. Italy broke up into all these different kingdoms that had different dialects, and they couldn't even understand each other until Mussolini came in and demanded everyone speak the true Italian. Interesting. Fascist. You could say he made the trains run on time, and he insisted that everyone speak the pure Italian, which, in as it says in the Mahabharata, no bad man is entirely bad, and no good man is entirely good. All these people have some good ideas, and just because they have some good ideas doesn't mean we have to hold on to everything that they say. I don't know if Stalin had a good idea. I don't think he did. He was completely evil. But some of these people might have. Hitler was a vegetarian, didn't want to eat meat. I mean, I think that's a wonderful idea, not to kill animals. But it certainly doesn't make Hitler a good person. So, yes, Mussolini did a good thing, but it doesn't mean Mussolini was good. So unfortunately, we're coming, where are we here? What can we do? how can we stop this from happening? Now, at the end of 1984, you think that this great love between Winston and Julia was going to hold on. And this was going to be the hope for humanity. But in the end, Winston betrays Julia, and she gets sent to room 101 to be eaten slowly by rats. He was afraid. He was broken down. You see, when you lose your humanity and you're not allowed to have yourself, your privacy was taken away from people in Russia. They would come into your house and they would count the rooms in your house. And if there were more rooms than people, they'd say, well, we're going to bring all these people in to live in this house. A bunch of people that you don't know, that may not even speak your language, might have a completely different religion, completely different way of life. They sit down on all the couches in every room, put their feet up and smoke their brains out. And they laugh really loud and they hit each other and they swear a lot. Yet you're a peaceful person who just needs their peace. So you can regain your humanity. So you can meditate in silence. And you don't have that. Your feelings don't matter. You do not matter. That is non-personhood. How do we keep this? How do we teach the socialists that this is not a good road, that they have been brainwashed? They have accepted slavery. The ultimate end is slavery. Communism, the ultimate end is slavery. And everything you do and say is dictated by the dictator, by the party, which takes your life away. It takes your life away before they kill you. It's just a living death. What do we do is the question. What do we do to stop this? First, we have to vote the right people in office. And the good thing is that we live in a republic and we have the electoral system. Because the electoral system, the importance of it is, and the difference between a republic and a democracy, we live in a republic. Each state is a democracy that can actually rule itself. But if you had a democracy across the entire United States, it would not work because, see, the concentrated bits of the population live on the coast, very heavy on the coast. And a lot of people come from other countries, and a lot of these countries are socialists. And they're used to a different way of life completely, and certainly all those beautiful bikini-clad bleach blondes that live on the sand in California, who tan themselves to death, they had no idea what color hair I had when I lived in California. They looked at it and the hairdresser said, "What color is this? Cinnamon? I've never seen this before." That's how completely you've never seen my color hair before. That's how completely gone they are. I mean, you've been to hairdressing school, didn't they have swatches of other colors? We're talking about people, and then you've got the Midwest, the people who grow the crops, who are the salt of the earth, and the people who, the plants that build our cars, and the good blue-collar workers that are just, those are also the salt of the earth. And then you've got the high thinkers, the East, that's filled with all the colleges that are all liberal, and they live in their another world. They have no idea what the people who live, who live by the earth, who plant their own crops, or have to work hard for a living. They don't know because they're academics. So if you have these people who live on the coast and it's a democracy, then they're going to speak for everyone in the country. And everyone in the country has different needs. A republic speaks for the minority. You think, oh, I thought the Democrats were all for the minorities. No, a republic, because there's a representative for the minority to speak. So they have a voice. So it isn't outweighed by the majority, and the majority are living completely different people, completely different needs, and we have to hold on to this system. Otherwise, we are lost. People on the outliers are going to speak for all of us, and a lot of these people living on the coast are from other countries, are new immigrants, undocumented immigrants, or people just who live in New York or in California. Just Americans all think completely different than the rest of us do. I think completely different than the rest of my town. So when you looked at the map of the last election, interesting to note, you have concentrated spots of blue here and there, but the map was red. The majority of Trump basically won most of the counties in the entire country, except for bits here and there of blue. It was just a sea of red. So maybe there's hope in that sense, but the borders being open and you come in and the state you can live here for free and we've got your vote, and basically in California, to fill out a voter registration form, the last page is, do you have an address? It starts with, do you have an ID? Do you have a driver's license? No. Do you have a library card? Do you have a bill, utility bill? No. Last page, give us an address. And that's it. That's really it. That's like the secret that people who live in California know, and I know, because I lived in California. And a judge just recently, last year, said that once you get a license, you're automatically registered to vote. Citizen or non-citizen, they really don't care. This is happening in all different parts of the country, including Virginia, and that happened July 7th of 2016. Terry McAuliffe, good friend of Hillary Clinton, changed the law and also allowed felons to vote because you didn't have to check the box anymore, whether you were a citizen or a felon. And interesting to note is that 200,000 felons, and she won by about 200,000 votes in the state of Virginia. And it's about 8 million immigrants, legal and illegal immigrants that live in Virginia as well. Obama bussed a lot of them coming over the border. So that has to stop. It has to stop. Because little do these people know what they're in for. You're going to lose your humanity. If I lost my ability to love, honestly, I don't think I could break down and send someone that I loved into room 101 to be eaten slowly by rats, because it would drive me insane. It would break me apart from within and just drive me insane, knowing that someone that I love was suffering like that. Every single moment that went by, I would know the pain that they were enduring. It would be more easy for me to go to room 101 to die. Ultimately, death is the ultimate end in 1984. And should this happen, and I have wrong to think, and I cannot betray my soul, who I am. I cannot do it. I wouldn't let them do that to my dog or my cats that I've owned. I wouldn't. That would kill me, or even little birds that I catch in the yard that fall out of their nests, and I take care of them until they can fly on their own. I could not handle that if someone took that little bird and tortured it to death. I cannot tell you what that would do to me. It would break me apart. I could not do that. I could not do that end. And we need to keep our humanity and our ability to love. We cannot let go of this. And somehow, whatever is causing this socialism, and I wouldn't doubt that the government was feeding us. This drug war should have been over. All drugs. This drug war should have been over a long time ago. We could have kept drugs out of this country, but they're coming in, pouring over the border. And that's why I mentioned the drugs. I'm wondering if, and Rome, is the government doing this to lull us into, to brainwash us, dehumanize us. When we lose our ability to have an intimate relationship, we can't do that anymore. And that we've found a direct link. In fact, there's studies all over the world on marijuana. And that's one of the ends, is that you have it at a certain age. Your brain isn't completely grown. And they say that it stays in mother's milk 6 days after, or even 7 days, it stays in the body after. But it's in mother's milk after one joint. And you're feeding that to your child whose brain is growing. And we know that it causes latent schizophrenia. We have a great many people who have bought into communism and socialism, and somehow they're so brainwashed. What is this? Did you ingest a drug intentionally or unintentionally, by your parents? They say it does affect even when you copulate and the egg is fertilized. It affects the sperm and it affects the egg, and there's low fetal weight as well. These studies have been done. And you wonder, of course, they're going to let us drive on it, and there's no way to test how much pot you can drive under that's safe, like we can with alcohol. But we've made it legal already. We've made this legal. And even when it was illegal, they allowed it into the country. Did they do this to distort our brains so we would be more easily brainwashed and more easily obedient? Just like Hillary said in her speech to Wall Street that was leaked by WikiLeaks. She wants an open border and an uninformed and compliant citizenry. And I can't think of a better example of an uninformed and compliant citizenry is the people who are holding on to socialism and communism, that they don't know what it is. They're completely brainwashed, and I think it's capitalists that have made these other countries suffer. They've bought into this. I can't help but think that this is the way they did it. You begin with drugs. You begin by a brain. It stops growing at the age of 26. You start sending those drugs in, and you get them to take it when they're young. And what do you have? Once you no longer have that human connection, you cannot have an intimate relationship anymore. And we have it's plagued. Divorce is a plague, and we're plagued with people who cannot hold on to an intimate relationship. They cannot do it. And there is a direct link to marijuana. I would say there would be a direct link to any drug that was given to someone who, before their brain was completely formed, that basically you're bathing your brain in a bath of toxic chemicals as it's trying to grow. And it brings out latent schizophrenia as well. I can imagine Ritalin, also prescription drugs. I can imagine giving that to a child. Can you imagine what that does to the child's brain? I'm kind of against all the drugs. Not just the ones we deem illegal, but the ones that the doctor writes as well. You're giving this to a child, and it's going to affect the child's brain. What happens? We become dehumanized. Once we cannot have an intimate relationship, we are no longer human. We've lost our humanity. It's a big deal, even though people don't realize they even are affected by it. They fail at relationships right and left, but they don't realize that they've been affected by this. And it could be the drugs. This is how it started. Of course, they could have clamped down on that. Of course, they could have sealed the border, prevented the drug cartels from coming in a long time ago. Of course, they could have done this. Of course, they could have said, no, don't give this stuff to little children, Ritalin, and whatever else that they give. And all the lists of side effects when you get a drug and they give you that printout sheet. May cause, will cause. These are all things that it does cause. These aren't side effects. This is a list of everything the drug does. Did they do this on purpose? And did they destroy us? And how do we get our humanity back? How do we regrow our brains to recapture our ability to love and our ability to have an intimate relationship? We lose our ability to love. We've lost everything because we've lost our ability for compassion. There's no more compassion when you cannot love. Love doesn't always mean a man and a woman or a man and a man, some kind of sexual relationship. Love is everything. Is loving plants, is loving the world, is loving the earth, is loving the animals, is loving all that was, humanity that was and humanity that will be. And maybe possibly if there's a realm after this that we should enter, and those that abide there. Love is an enormous thing. It's not just between lovers, but we cannot lose that. And the question is, how do we teach this? How do we teach this? How do we get these people who are holding on to socialism and communism and making 1984 this happening? The government is doing it. The majority of the government is liberal because there are perks. There are many perks because you work for the government and you get a pension, which is about 75% of what your earnings are. And your earnings, if you work for the government, is about $150,000 to $300,000. And then you can retire, and then you can get another job in the government and get your pension, full pay, and then your pension. So the government is huge. That's why the Democrats want to keep growing the government, because it's an incredible perk. Who has a pension? I don't have a pension. There's so many of us who don't have pensions, who live, hand to mouth, and I live hand to mouth. That's why the Democrats, that's why they want to get the government as big as possible and as many people as possible dependent on the government. So you have your drones, and then you have government class, the party that gets all the money and lives very well, which you would think would be anti-communist because it's about the people and the good of the people, but it's not. It's for the good of the party. And we have been dumbed down by abuse and the abuse of being watched, the eye watching us 24 hours a day. That's an abuse. We're controlled. Because we know this, even if we don't take a drug, we know this. But the drugs do help, don't they? Then we have to take the drugs because we know we're being watched. And we become destroyed and eroded more and more. And then we get to the point like Wist, who sold out the love of his life. So maybe none of us can say, as you hear my little dog breathing as he sleeps, I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it to him. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it to a baby bird. I would rather die. I'd be much happier. Even if they live for a moment, and humanity and those who hold humanity that are able to hold their humanity and ability to love, live as long as possible. Maybe there's hope for the world, that maybe those people can take it back one day. And if I have to sacrifice myself, I would do it. I would do it. I couldn't see anyone that I loved die in a horrible way. No, I couldn't. Or humanity. So, thank you for joining me. Hope you've understood 1984, what's happening now. Give you a big picture of what's going on now, and an updated version of 1984. So, I love you, my fans. For a few people who watch me, I love you. And you know what? Get the word out about this. Reach people. Maybe we can change things. But we have to hold on to our humanity and ability to love to do it. Otherwise, it is impossible. Hold on to yourself and live as long as possible and as healthy as possible, so we can retain humanity. And you be the holders of this, the greatest treasure of them all, our love and our humanity. Live and hold on to it as long as possible.